Good afternoon. I'm Vicki Cabot. I have the pleasure of being here this afternoon, a sunny afternoon in Scottsdale, Arizona, with Elaine Hirsch, who I've had the pleasure of knowing many years, both professionally and communally, and as a friend. Elaine's been here for, I think, almost 30 years.
That's correct.
We're today sitting at the Jewish Community Campus, the Ein Levine Jewish Community Campus in Scottsdale, where the offices of the Bureau of Jewish Education are housed, and where Elaine has been working for, I think, 20 years.
Yeah,
right?
That's correct.
That's it. So tell me, you came here in the late 1970s?
Came here in June of 1979.
Okay.
Yes.
And you were born and raised in?
I was raised in Cincinnati, Ohio.
What was it like growing up there?
Well, I remember I went to an elementary school that was mostly like 90% Jewish, although most of the Jews were Reform Jews. So it was very interesting, and I belonged
Cincinnati was the center.
Yes, Center for Reform Judaism,
right.
and I grew up in an Orthodox synagogue called Ahov Shalom, which has now become a conservative synagogue.
Interesting.
But I remember there were students at the school who actually belonged to a synagogue that had services on Sunday.
Oh my.
Mm-hmm. And so it was the bastion of Reform Judaism, and it was classical.
When it was the cutting edge of what was happening.
Yes, it was classical Reform Judaism.
Mm-hmm,
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and you
right.
went to college in?
I went to college in Cincinnati for undergraduate school, and I went to graduate school at Brandeis.
Okay, so you went back. You went further east.
I went further east.
And then
yes.
how did you actually end up coming to Arizona then?
Well, it's interesting because I had been out here with my sister visiting my great aunt and uncle. We came out in March, and it was snowy and awful back east, and we thought, this is a nice place to live.
This isn't bad. Yeah.
Yes, and then when my husband was doing his pediatric residency at University of Michigan, it was some of the worst winters ever of the 20th century. It was the winters of 77, 78, 79. I think it was like 50 degrees below zero in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was just, pretty awful.
And where's David from?
David's from Cleveland. We're Buckeyes.
Okay.
We're Buckeyes.
And you met at?
I met him when I was an undergraduate in Cincinnati, and he was in medical school at Cincinnati.
And so anyway, you came out with your sister, and you thought about this, and then you...
Right, and then my husband and I came out, and we knew we didn't want to stay in Ohio. We knew we wanted to move someplace warm. We thought, our whole lives are ahead of us. We're young, and we didn't want to go to California because of earthquakes. So we decided, well, we know my Aunt Debbie and Uncle Jack Metz here, and we visited out here. We'll try our lives out here, and that's how we ended up out here. Actually, because of them.
So now you came with David. Your children were born here? You have two boys, right?
They were born here. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and when you came out here, your background is in Jewish education?
Jewish communal service.
Okay, that was what your master's was from Brandeis.
That's right.
Had you worked on the East Coast before you came, or were you fresh out of school?
I was fresh out of school, but we had to work also. And I worked at the JCC in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which was not a bad place to work because I walked outside of my door and there was the ocean. So it was beautiful.
Yes,
yeah,
I've been to Marblehead.
And I had a wonderful, wonderful teacher, B. Paul, who I'm still in contact with.
Okay.
She was my mentor.
And so then you came out here, and were you working early on or not?
Yeah, my first job was at Jewish Family Services.
Okay, and what did you do?
With Russian resettlement.
Oh, I remember that. Okay.
And I remember Stella. She remembers Stella and a few of the other families. And then I moved over to the JCC.
And the Russian resettlement was in the early 80s? No, yes.
Late 70s.
Late 70s,
Late
okay.
70s, yeah. And then I moved over to the JCC until my son was about to be born.
And then for you professionally, then you were at the J, and then what did you do before you started with the Bureau? When did you start with the Bureau?
I started in the Bureau of January 1988.
Okay. And
we were on Osborne Avenue, which the building no longer exists, and it was a little room.
And was there already well, go back a step.
Yes,
and tell me about how the genesis of the library.
My
and the
predecessor was Toby Waxenberg. Toby is now the middle school director at Pardes, but I believe she started the library in the trunk of her car. And then...
That's the real traveling library,
yes, that's right. It was in the trunk of her car. And then we had this little room in Osborne. It was just a real tiny little room. And
what was the mission initially? And has it
just
changed?
as a resource center, more as a resource for teachers as opposed to the community, because you really can't serve the community out of the trunk of your car, even in that little room. There just
Right.
wasn't the space. So, and then we moved to Coolidge. We were on the first floor. The Federation was on the second floor. We had a little more space, so we became more of a community library. And a lot of people who went to Federation and also took adult education classes began using the library. So it became more of a communal type institution. And then the Bureau expanded too,
Right.
with classes and so on, with Hebrew High.
You want to just speak very briefly about what the Bureau, have you seen the Bureau change, and also then again about how the Library and Resource Center has changed in the last
yes.
20 years?
Well, when I started, I think Aaron Scholar had been our director for 4 years. And
he is the current director.
he's the current director. And may have a few more gray hairs when I started. But I've seen the community grow. That's what's very interesting, and the challenges grow with the community. Certainly in population, we've grown in the number of Jews, and then the challenge is that we want to do so much. We're a small staff. We do a lot. All of us at the Bureau wear a lot of different hats, and in many communities, what we do as individuals, they have several people doing what one individual is accomplishing.
Have you seen from your work in the community any changes in terms of the interests, in terms of people seeking out the resources that you have or the programming that you have?
I think that, of course, closer to the immigrant generation, you have more connection with Israel, more connection with Holocaust, with those kinds of memories with an immigrant generation. Mm-hmm. And as we get further removed from that immigrant generation, we have to teach people why Israel is important, why we must remember the Holocaust. We want them to reclaim their Jewish heritage, which is why we now have programs like the Melton Mini School and all our adult education programs. Myra runs her Hebrew High program. My colleague Linda Feldman runs family education programs. We literally have, you use the quote from womb to tomb, we literally have programs for baby university for expectant parents. Mm-hmm. And then when the babies are born, we have marriage university for couples who are engaged or serious couples. And then we have elders programs in Sun City every Tuesday. We get 150 people, seniors, studying Jewishly. Yes,
which is very exciting.
That is.
It's very exciting. Seeing as certainly the population, the demographics have changed here. The community certainly has grown.
I remember when we were at Coolidge, and the main zip codes were 85015 and 20 and 21, and now they're 54 and 55 and 60, because we do all our own mailings, so we know how the demographics have changed.
Shifted.
Yes,
Right,
they've shifted.
But in terms of what the Bureau and specifically what the Resource Center and the library offer to us, in the future, do you see us being alive and well, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? We're talking history, but let's project ahead.
I would certainly hope so, because now there's people are going to their Kindles. AOL is promoting the Kindle, where you can download books and take this little device on your vacation instead of the book. But there's nothing like holding a book and turning those pages, I think. I mean, maybe another generation has another sensibility about books.
Maybe there's a place for both.
There is a place for it, absolutely. And we are the people of the book. And now we have the Jewish Book Fair going on, and I think there's a resurgence, especially with people wanting to find out more about their Jewish heritage in terms of Jewish history, nonfiction books, historical fiction.
It's all there. I thank you for taking the time to speak to us and for giving us some perspective on why it's important to be able to recover our past through books in order to chart the future. Thanks.